Hello and welcome to the Arise interview, where we take time to reflect on the big stories from the news and on the fortunes and affairs of the world in an hour of conversation with commentators, analysts and thought leaders. I'm Sani Usman. Coming up in the next 60 minutes, human rights groups in Nigeria have been accused of creating more security challenges by frustrating the government's efforts. According to federal authorities, the International Criminal Court and Amnesty International have been basing their allegations against the government and its military on fake news and disinformation, threatening security forces with investigations and possible prosecution. Are these human rights groups a threat to national security? We'll speak to a former spokesman of the Nigerian Army, General Sani Usman, retired. And later, the Democrats claim victory in one of the key U.S. Senate runoffs. Raphael Warnock will be Georgia's first black senator, but his Republican opponent, Senator Kelly Loeffler, is yet to concede. Warnock got strong support from black voters and young voters. According to correspondents, even incumbent Republican Senator David Perdue can win the other race. Republicans will remain in control of the Senate. And if Democrats win both seats, what could likely happen? We have analysis coming up. Insecurity remains Nigeria's biggest challenge, and there have been various attacks by armed groups, including bandits, kidnappers, and Boko Haram insurgents in many states across the country. The Nigerian government claims human rights groups and the International Criminal Court are creating more challenges. It says security forces are being threatened with investigations and possible prosecution over alleged war crimes and human rights abuses. But in reply, the Buhari administration has been criticized for using repression as a way of dealing with dissent and public opposition. Well, for more on this, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by General Sani Usman, retired, who is a former spokesman of the Nigerian Army. Good to have you, General. And how have you been coping in retirement?
It is my pleasure to be here, and I'm very grateful to God. I'm coping very well. And it's a very wonderful experience, you know.
Good to see you in civilian clothing.
Thank you so much.
All right, let's go straight to these issues. The federal government says that Amnesty International, along with the International Criminal Court, seem to be putting lots of pressure on troops, and it demoralizes them. You are a former soldier. What do you make of that? Do the ground troops actually get demoralized, or it's the commanding officers that get demoralized?
I think it is everybody. It cut across the rank and files of the security forces, particularly the armed forces, and the Nigerian Army in particular, which is being targeted over time. And of course, to an average Nigerian citizen, because nobody would have loved to see his country's armed forces or security forces being denigrated and being reduced to this kind of ridicule by some of these international non-governmental organizations. And apart from that also, there is nothing wrong, you know, in putting an eye on the activities of, you know, the armed forces, ensuring that they adhere to rules of engagement and the conduct, they respect human rights. It strengthens democracy, okay? But the issue is when you consistently give an erroneous impression about a particular, you know, constitutionally created institutions of the government, a beggar believes that you have ulterior motives. And exactly that what Amnesty has been doing over the years.
Now, let's take a look at some of the operations of the Nigerian military itself. There have been accusations of violation of human rights, and then also we've seen, for example, where the armed forces mistakenly bomb communities and all of that. And groups like this would want to say, look, once things like this happen, there should be a proper investigation. Like, for example, the Iran bombings that took place where the Air Force, commanded by a military general, bombed an IDP camp. Almost nothing seems to have been heard of that. Don't you think that these international organizations have a right to project those kind of issues?
Everybody has a right, you know, and responsibility to be concerned about the well-being and the welfare of human life, not necessarily government. It is good because it enhances, the democracy and rule of law, ensuring that people abide by the law. I don't hold brief for the government, and I know the Rand incident has been thoroughly investigated, and I'm sure those found culpable, if there is any, definitely appropriate disciplinary action will be taken against them. And in a war situation that Nigeria is being confronted with, given the Boko Haram insurgents example, apart from the kinetic aspect of it, there are other non-kinetic aspects. There is so much misinformation and disinformation. And I don't know whether you've been to Rand before. If you haven't, the information about IDP camp and all the rest of the thing, it is not accurately captured. It was within the town itself. And by the way, it is also the headquarters of 3 battalions of the Nigerian Army. It's just a stone throw. So everybody could have been a victim to that unfortunate mishap. So people should always weight it in the proper context. Particularly some of these international NGOs, they talked about victims and all the rest. But in a situation of this nature, the damage is collateral, because it is not just the civilian population that suffer, but even the military itself. And apart from the fact that the military, they also have family. So it is not just, the civilians. Sometimes it might not necessarily be the force of gun or what have you. Even a careless word, and sometimes it has the capability of inflicting more damage on the psyche of an average Nigerian or an average Nigerian soldier. So sometimes when issues of this nature come into play, people have to put it into proper perspective and context and understand the import and the impact of whatever they do, whatever they say. And they should respect the sovereignty of the Nigerian state. Amnesty International and International Criminal Courts are not sovereign states. Nigeria voluntarily entered into, the Rome Agreement. And of course, Amnesty International, we have myriads of other, non-governmental organizations that are doing pretty well. I could remember the Red Cross, for instance. There is a kind of good working relationship with the Nigerian military. And I know for certain that even those that have been in military holding facilities, their menu and medical care is being adhered to in conjunction with some of these NGOs. And I believe the military and the Nigerian society, is not asking for much other than constructive engagement, so that we adhere to the best international practice, so that it will be a win-win situation. Exactly.
Now, let's take a look at some of the recent issues that led to this upsurge, and even with the ICC saying that it's opening an investigation into alleged human rights abuses by the Nigerian military. The Lekki shootings that happened in October, we had soldiers on uniform opening fire on protesting civilians and all of that. And this actually heightened lots of tension, not within Nigeria alone, but globally, that the military seem to have been abusing human rights. Now, with the Amnesty International actually raising such issues, and then the ICC now saying that it's going to investigate, isn't it proper for the military to actually say, we are not afraid of anything? I mean, we are ready if you want to investigate us. We did and operated within the international human rights system. Why is it so difficult for the military to want to open up for investigation?
I don't speak for the military, but,
yes, but given, you were formerly a part of
given the residual knowledge and the wealth of experience for, having in the military for over 30-something years, and having been the spokesman for the Nigerian Army for over 4 to 5 years, I think I'm in a better position to say a word or two in respect of that. I don't want to talk about the issue of the allegations concerning the lake. Why? Because it is being investigated by a special panel of inquiry, and I think it will be judiced to talk about it. But I don't think the military has not been forthright with information, because I could remember when International Criminal Court came out with a statement on the 11th, which I believe is Friday, or rather was Friday, 11th December 2020. Shortly a few minutes after, and that should even arise, should generate some kind of curiosity. The local branch of Amnesty International key into it barely some minutes, you know.
so you, because it aligned to their interest.
Yes, you look at the synchronization, and you begin to wonder whether these guys have been talking to themselves over time on this issue. Now, it is out of that, the military, and ideally it is not even the responsibility of the military, and that is the problem we have in Nigerian society. The military is fighting a war. In the first place, it did not even start the war. The military has never deployed itself. It's always been deployed. So they are acting on behalf.
In other words, the order comes from the commander-in-chief.
Well, I will not say precisely. There are proper channels. There are proper channels of command and proper channels of communication.
Well, for example, the Lagos State governor says he doesn't have that power, and he never ordered for the soldiers to be on ground.
It's immaterial. It's immaterial. You see, one thing people fail to understand is that by the time they said this is a commissioned officer of the armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, regardless of his or her rank or status of appointment, he is representing the President Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And that is why parchment of commission, which is more or less like a letter of appointment, is signed by no other person than the President Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. He doesn't even delegate it to the Vice President. So people should understand the magnitude and the importance of a military officer. So when you talk about all these things, sometimes people with fair understanding of things will tell you that this is how it is. So now let's even look at this issue now. It is in the absence of that the military had to come out unequivocally to assure the officers and soldiers fighting these insurgents, fighting these bandits, fighting these kidnappers and other myriads of criminals in the society that, look, you should not be demoralized. I could remember the army specifically came out with a statement.
General Buratai said this when he was addressing his principal staff officers, GOCs,
and we have to give kudos to him because he was on safe isolation after what happened. You know, the COVID-19 protocol had to be respected and all the rest of the thing. So he showed leadership, and that is what it is all about, because there is so much misinformation in respect of the ICC and Amnesty International statement that is demoralized.
Doesn't provide information, don't you think it gives room for disinformation?
It provided the information in this instance, in the sense that he has to give assurance, and subsequently the Defense Headquarters, and the letters being what the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, who held a press conference just recently and addressed the issue also, and that is how it's supposed to be. You know, we should not leave the military to itself when issues of this nature. We should be able to give them proper sense of belonging, because they are not there.
Because of the history of the military in Nigerian politics. For example, you know, we've had military rule for a long period of time, and a lot of people have this natural distrust for the military because they feel that whatever they are being told when a situation occurs is, first of all, a lie. Then before the truth is eventually revealed, maybe by circumstances, and all of that. So how do you think there can be this trust building between it and the public?
Before I talk about the way forward, about how do we, I want you to understand, Nigerians are quite right. You know, the involvement of military in the governance of the country is an aberration. But this is something that we have turned our back against, because democracy has been with us now for almost 21 years now. At least it is long enough for us to, you know, jettison certain things. And over time, I can understand, you know, during military administration, the pro-democracy and everybody else wanted to have a democratic Federal Republic of Nigeria, and they did all they could. Now we have democracy since 1998 to date. 1999. Well, the process, the transition process started between, you know, in the days of Abacha General Abdul Salami's government, you know, the shortest transition period. So when you come, I mean, when Nigerians all agree to that fact that Nigeria is going to be a democratic government, now, you know, it's going to be run by a democratic system of government, everything has to be in place. It is not just the military. And I could remember the military came out with a 15-year plan, which I think, I have forgotten, ONAT is for short, but the whole idea is attitudinal change. You know, orienting the gamut of the Nigerian military. That look, you were used to a particular system. Now the system is involving the bureaucracy. You have to be patient. You have to be understand. You know, the procurement
Subject
process is
civilian
civil authority and all the rest. We have to give kudos. But unfortunately, the government itself, it ought to orient the Nigerian society also, that they should be able to see the military in a democratic dispensation in a new light. And I know we should give credit to some of these Western countries. I could remember here in this Transcorp Hotel, there was a seminar which I attended way back in 2005 or thereabout, you know, reporting the military in a democratic society. You patterning it in the American system where everybody in the society is equally involved and on the same page, right from the commander-in-chief.
General Usman, do you see the intervention of Amnesty International and ICC as internal meddling in the affairs of Nigeria?
There is no doubt about the fact that it is. And if you look at the antecedents, particularly of Amnesty International, and I will take you back into memory lane. Way back February 2016, I was directed, based on the concern of the military, particularly Army's hierarchy, that we need to have constructive engagement with this non-governmental organization, particularly Amnesty International. I wrote the email to Amnesty headquarters in London, and they sent a delegation that sat with the principal staff officers and the chief of army staff of the Nigerian Army, whereby all the allegations, previous allegations, were tabled. And I could remember that then acting provost marshal was the one who gave the brief. He's now a major general in the army. He gave brief and questions were asked in respect to all the allegations. And the director of research also, the Ethiopian man, Netsanat Belay also, all he had to say was that it was not an independent investigation. But you should understand, the Nigerian military or the armed forces of Nigeria are creation of the Nigerian constitution, which is the will of the people. So you cannot subject it to non-state actors, because it has administrative and other operational mechanisms, whereby procedures are being followed if there are misdemeanors or acts of indiscipline. But
let's talk about the involvement of the military in internal security operations. We have the army spread in about 34 states of the country, and during that period, because it's not the natural forte of the army, for example, to be engaged in civil security duties, you see lots of soldiers misbehaving, doing one thing or the other. How do you think that we can act more and support other security agencies to reduce the impact of the army, you know, in civil matters? I mean, shouldn't the police and other security agencies be supported so that there will be a gradual withdrawal of soldiers from military operations within the internal security system?
We still have to go back to what I was saying earlier on. 1999 to date, Nigeria is a democratic society. Now, what are those things that are being put in place over time? Take, for instance, even our conflict resolution mechanisms are faulty. Because what brought about, if you could remember the early 2000s, the myriads of security challenges that manifested themselves in ethno-religious crisis, you remember Kaduna was no-go area and what have you. Now, what is there in place to, you know, give the average Nigerian sense of belonging that in a democratic government, in a democratic setting, rule of law is sacrosanct, in the sense that the weak is being protected by the state. Our judicial system and all other government apparatus are watching. And they cannot work if you do not invest in it. Now, part of the criminal justice system is our policing system. Now, you should ask yourself, to what extent have we invested in the police over the last 20 years in this country, in terms of recruitment, in terms of training, in terms of reorientation, in terms of logistics and other administratives. And I can rest assure you, security doesn't come cheap. It is not just issue of funding, but there are other things also.
Well, it's because of the failure in police. That's why we had splinter groups of the police, like the Civil Defense Corps and all of that.
It is not the failure of the police.
Wasn't it an investment by the government also?
It is not the failure of the police. It is the system itself.
Because if the police failed, and then there was this civil defense being brought in place to support
Look, there should be development. Some years back, there was no Arise television news. You know, they opened the space, you know, in the broadcast industries, I mean, in the 1990s. And we have how many television stations? It's for the betterment of the Nigerian society.
Would you support the institution of, for example, a national guard system, like former President Ibrahim Babangida, head of state, had said he wanted to do earlier on?
It might not necessarily
so
be
that
the
we will
national
have
guard
more soldiers on the streets.
In fact, I'm even writing a paper advocating that we should have ministerial establishment that will deal with some of these issues. Now, all we are interested is the kinetic aspect of it. Remember, even the fight against terrorism and insurgency, or if you take it, let's say 100%, military effort is not up to maybe 60%. There should be other aspects. To what extent are we taking advantage of that and, you know, promoting it? Take, for instance, the issue of conflict resolutions. And what is the criminal justice system? What are those institutions that are supposed to
and the failure of politicians to live up to their promises also? Because I've heard lots of military guys like you saying that because the civil authorities have failed to address issues of hunger, for example, you have lots of problems in the country.
There is no way you can heighten. There is no way you can heighten expectation without meeting up with those expectations. That's some of the problems, and I can tell you. And I want you to understand that part of the problems we have is the issue of good governance. The RAN you talked about is a local government headquarters of Kala Belge local government. The last time I was there, either 2019 or 2019 or 2018. Up to now, I just can't get that image off my head that there is no more terrible roads to a local government headquarters in Nigeria. When I mean more terrible road, I'm not even talking about feeder road, not even that kind of debris of Larry Kwanyan or blessed memory. No, there wasn't a local government headquarters, and there are many like that. To what extent have we touched the lives of these people living in these areas? These are some of the things, so that they will have a sense of belonging. They will look at security as a collective responsibility that they know they owe it as a duty, you know, to the states and to the security forces to provide this, that, and that, you know, to support and encourage them.
But you also blame Nigerians. There are more situations whereby you see the police coming, lots of people don't believe in them, but once soldiers come, you see lots of happiness that soldiers are going to restore peace and order. Isn't that an indictment on
it is not even an indictment,
the civil authorities that until soldiers come, a lot of Nigerians do not have confidence in the security system?
No.
And wouldn't this lead to a stretch of the military if we continue pushing soldiers into internal security operations?
It depends on the perspective you look at it from. From the military perspective, it's something that they should be very happy and very proud of themselves, that Nigerians have respect for them. And that is exactly what those international non-governmental organizations are not happy with. They want to cripple them down so that we end up without anything that belongs to Nigeria.
Because the army is supposed to focus on external security aggression.
That is one. Secondly, we go back to the issue you were talking about, availability or non-availability of the military. You know, we have had instances, and I will give you this example. There was a time when we were moving on the Chief of Army Staff convoy, and there was an ambush in which we lost some soldiers, and the soldiers also rose to the occasion. They were able to kill about 5 or 6 terrorists, and one of the officers was even incapacitated. Thank God he is better now. He's even a Major General, serving very well. But the long and short of it is that we always have embedded journalists in our, you know, convoy right from 2015, since 16th July 2015 to date. we give credit to the Chief of Army Staff, he always have this journalist, and nobody tamper with the way they report issues. Now, because of the nature of it, they had to be embedded into the various military vehicles for their safety and protection. One of them was in the vehicle of the commander of the signal brigade. So all said and done, after the clearance of the ambush and all the rest, we came back, I issued a statement. After issuing the statement, somebody came to my camp and he wanted to talk to me. A very seasoned journalist that we respect a lot. He's still serving. And he said, look, he has a confession to make and an apology. I was taken aback because this is somebody that I so much respect. And he said, look, all my years of practice as a journalist, I don't believe that the military was saying the truth. We're here today, SK, because you know that's the name they used to call me after my initial. So you proved me wrong. I'm really sorry. Now you look at, this is somebody who has been in journalism practice for over 25 years. So you can imagine the
way you also handle your public relations.
No, it is not me.
Because
it is not
me.
I mean, it was the policy.
Since you actually left.
It was the policy of the Chief of Army Staff. No, it is not.
The more we actually have more professionals like you who are handling military civil relations in a very fantastic way, it makes it much easier. So, well, we just have to go on a break right now. When we come back, we'll actually be talking about some of the critical things that we have to take a look at, and that will have to do with, you know, this issue of human rights, what we actually define as human rights when it comes to military civil relations, especially from the perspective of the Nigerian Army. You're still watching the Arise interview, plenty more still ahead, including the Nigerian government claims human rights groups are demoralizing frontline troops. Well, we want to investigate and see how these commanding officers are demoralized at times when there are situations. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Sumner Sambo. Recall that Financial Times, a foreign-based media, in one of its recent editorials, had described Nigeria as a failed state, a piece that triggered an uproar in certain sections of the government. Nigeria's Minister of Communication, Lai Mohammed, in defense of the government, described as jaundice analysts and their lapdogs those who declared that Nigeria is a failing or failed state due to its security challenges. Also, the Nigerian government claims human rights groups are creating more security challenges by frustrating the government's efforts and threatening security forces with investigations and possible prosecution. I still have with me in the studio General Sani Usman, retired, who's a former spokesman of the Nigerian Army. Good to still have you here, General. Let's talk about specific instances. I've heard some people actually saying that this kind of statements may have affected recruitment into the Nigerian Army, that lots of persons are afraid of getting to the Army because, I mean, statements by Amnesty International and other international organizations may actually, stop them from achieving the heights that they want, because a lot of them don't want to lose visas, for example, when they want to travel abroad or even just go for relaxation or some other things. What specific instance can you give as an example that we can call a demoralizing aspect, like the Minister of Information has said, which affects troops?
There are more than one. I will start with, first and foremost, how they come about the Lehi law that was used on the Nigerian society.
Sometime around 2014,
exactly.
2015.
It was at the instance of a letter by Amnesty International to the United States government that made the then Obama administration to deny Nigeria weapons, needed weapons to fight these insurgencies. When they have upgraded their weaponry, the Nigerian soldier is left with his own weaponry we cannot be able to buy, not just from the United States. We couldn't even buy anywhere in the country. And a large extent, you remember when even, the Borno State governor then came out to say that the Nigerian, the Boko Haram were far more equipped or better equipped than the Nigerian soldier. And of course, the government was trying so hard to upgrade, but they couldn't do it. Why? Because these NGOs have written deny, and I expect even the Nigerian government to take them to court for the casualty we have sustained over that kind of thing. That is one.
Wherein the counterclaims by the government.
That is one. Then there were instances where some officers were allegedly involved in human rights abuses. They compiled their names, took them to one of the some of the Western countries, and they denied them visa. I could remember of a retired major general who lost his wife here in Abuja. She couldn't be evacuated because of lack of visa, because he was placed on ban. So he lost his wife. So all his 36 years of service in the military were they were nothing anymore, because this is his wife with a life-threatening disease that couldn't be treated here in this country, and she was supposed to be evacuated, but they couldn't get visa simply because an NGO has written that says so. And unfortunately, again, you know, the methods of even coming to all these issues were faulty. I could remember there was an altercation in December which year when the military were moving with missiles along Zuba and all the rest, simply because some of the guards were, the soldiers manning a particular choke point were from gas brigade. All they did, they look at a program of events of, one of the activities of the gas brigade and look at the list of officers, and they would say all of them were called for program of events.
Very interesting. So would you say that Lehi law, for example, the inability of the Nigerian government to access, a purchase of equipment in different countries is still affecting us? Because this government is still complaining that it hasn't been able to access the international market to buy these military equipment.
Because of the agreement between the United States and other countries, even if, let's assume the armored tank is being manufactured in Brazil and some component part of it is in Egypt or wherever, because of that law, and definitely they have to tell the United States.
Because Egypt is an ally of the US.
For instance, I'm just using that as an example, not necessarily country specific. So automatically wherever you turn to, even the black market is very difficult.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to come to. We had black market from Belarus, Ukraine, and all of that.
Yes, but
the government
at what
still
cost?
Be accessing that black market.
At what cost? And when something is black market, it's unconventional. But it's something that you are paying with
as long as you get results.
But will they give you the right caliber of weapons? Or sometimes you have ammunition that doesn't fire at the face of the enemy. So these are some of the implications of some of these things.
And there have been calls for private security contractors to be engaged again, like it was done at the exit period of the former administration of Jonathan. Would you subscribe to that?
I will never ever subscribe to that.
Well,
for obvious reasons.
Actually did that.
Well, let me tell you. Let me tell you. And one interesting fact that people tend to miss out. When this administration came on board, appointing service chiefs, particularly that of the Nigerian Army, because I was in the thick of it, I know that the Chief of Army Staff then did not manufacture soldiers, did not manufacture equipment, but he was able to get back all the territories being held by the Boko Haram terrorists. How did he do it? A wonderful leadership. Okay? So, what I'm trying to say is that with this, you can be able to achieve results.
Well, you
the
didn't get
average
to,
Nigerian
the root of my question. Ibn Ballo, for example, the private security
I'm
contractor in South Africa, has said that this administration by President Muhammadu Buhari denied them the opportunity to complete the job that they had been asked by the previous administration to do.
You see,
and people are saying that if we have them, we may actually push back Boko Haram.
To where?
Well, to the neighboring countries or so.
What I want you to understand, by the time their contract was terminated, was Boko Haram not holding on to territory, including their caliphate headquarters? Yes or no?
They helped Nigeria to organize 2015 elections. Remember, the former National Security Advisor, Sambo Dasuki, has said that the election should be postponed
Sambo,
so that they will be given more time.
I wish. When last were you in Maiduguri?
Not recently.
Oh my God. Oh my God. You need to know what it was before 2015, let's say July 2015, and afterwards. Remember, I also served in the theater for 1 year, 2014 to 20, after one division. I was moved to that place. So I know that we shed tears, that in Maiduguri they have never had Salah celebration for 5, 6, 7 years. But they had. The governor, the Sheikh of Borno were all in El Kanemi Stadium. Rama Square or El Kanemi, yes. I can't remember, Rama Square. Not a single chicken died when you have intermittent bomb blasts every 24 hours inside Maiduguri city itself.
But well, we had that same former governor, Kashim Shettima, recently.
No, I'm not
shedding tears again. That the insecurity situation in that state is appalling.
I just came back from Maiduguri last Sunday, from the northeast.
Well, we had him on our show here on Arise, where he actually spoke straight into the eyes of the president, asking for the service chiefs
I don't want to go into.
A lot of Nigerians have said
that the politics and the motive
stay of the service chiefs is affecting the fight against security.
We might as well say that about every segment of the Nigerian society. Now, going back to that issue, Balo is a contractor, is a businessman. He has every right to advertise his work the way he deems fit, and that's exactly what he is doing. But for those who are knowledgeable enough will understand that some of the things that he was saying were not factually correct. And that's exactly what I'm telling you. That without them, we are able to achieve this much. And we could do more given the desired support, encouragement, and understanding of the Nigerian society. That's all I'm trying to say. And I know we have the capacity to do that. We don't need these distractions. We don't need to politicize security issues.
Do you believe that the army under the incumbent Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai is still capable of defeating not just the Boko Haram insurgents, but also the armed bandits terrorizing northwest Nigeria?
More than capable. More than capable. I can tell you, we don't need these distractions. We don't need these politicizations.
But a lot of your colleagues in the army are saying that overstaying in that position as the chief of army staff has affected promotion of other generals. I mean, you were lucky to have been a general. There are others whose dream it is to become generals, and unless we have this general actually exiting alongside with others, it will be difficult for them to be promoted to generals. And so that's why they're asking for this service chief to be taken away.
I like this kind of question. A bad tennis player always blames his racket, not himself. That is it. You know, the issue is that I just don't want to go into this issue at all. Why? Because the motive is far from clear and good. I would rather let's focus on these distractions as manifested by the call made by ICC, and of course jumping into it by the Amnesty International.
Very well. Although there have been calls by lots of Nigerians consistently, including the National Assembly, for the change of this service chiefs. And so if the National Assembly is saying that, then it means there's something interesting there. But well, we just have a few minutes left. And I want to interestingly know how you've been spending your time in retirement. I mean, you're looking very fresh. I've been seeing your engagements everywhere. How does it feel like being in private civil life after spending a lot of years in the military?
It's wonderful. And I must give thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for making it possible for me. But I'm also blessed with a wonderful family that are very supportive and understanding. And the system that I came through, the military, had really prepared me for this aspect of life. Because it is a fact of life. Anybody that joined the military would like to one day retire peacefully, and God in his infinite mercy has given me that grace. And the system has not, dispensed with me, so to speak, because I'm so privileged, so lucky, in the sense that there is no way I can pick my phone to call anybody in the military that will not pick my call. I couldn't have wished for anything better. No. But then I came from a farming society. I'm also a farmer, and having reached the pinnacle of my career, as a public relations practitioner, being a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, I practice public relations. So I'm into so many things at the same time. But I give credit to my wife for the looks and everything, really.
That's very interesting indeed. Well, as we try to round off this conversation, what would be your advice to President Muhammadu Buhari, considering the chunk of time that insecurity has taken away from him, which has made him not to focus on other critical areas of the economy? In 1 minute, what do you think is that golden bullet that can solve this issue of insecurity?
No, I am not in a position to advise the President Commander-in-Chief.
Well, you are in private civil life now.
I would rather encourage him. Okay. I would rather encourage him to do more. The myriads of the problems in the Nigerian society, they are more than enough to weigh anybody down. But I would rather encourage him to continue to do the best he could, to ensure that every aspect that needs to be tackled is tackled simultaneously so that we have a better society. Okay.
And what would you say to some of your colleagues who have actually said that the president has been slow sometimes in decision making?
Well, I wouldn't know. Even though I've been trained in policy issues and all the rest of the thing, but people hardly understand the fact that democracy, that is the essence of it. You just have to exhaust everything to make sure that you are taking, the right decision, given the right information. Sometimes it might not readily be available.
All right, we just have to go right now. Thank you so much, General Sani Usman, popularly known as SK Usman. You made a very good service to the Nigerian people, and they appreciate you. It's also nice having you here on the Arise interview. We want to thank you for showing up. You're still watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead, including, stay with us, we have the Georgia election right now because lots of things are happening in the US, and we want to know how that state is influencing the outcome of the Biden presidency. Stay with us.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Think Zenith. In today's fast-moving, fast-changing world, you need a financial partner that understands your unique expectations. A bank with presence in major financial centers across the world, with the enabling platform to facilitate seamlessly, whenever, wherever, however. A bank with best-in-class financial solutions from a superb combination of technology and human touch. For easy, fast and secure banking that creates real value. Turning dreams into reality is now in your hands. People, technology, service. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.